Hello everybody, my name is Zach Kenney. This is another episode of ZK Live, episode 20 I believe. We're going to be doing this one again from my house. It's a Sunday evening, it's about 9 p.m. But yeah, so we had a very busy week this week. Every week seems to be very busy these days, got a lot of stuff going on. I'm really excited that we loaded into our Beacon Hill Black Gloss project. Just because it's a larger project, it sort of takes some of the stresses away from me of like managing. Everything's sort of on a longer timeline, so it's sort of get everybody set up and the work starts to begin, and we can sort of just, there's not a lot of like getting set up, cleaning up, getting set up, getting cleaned up. It's sort of get loaded in, start our process, and everything, because of the scale, just takes longer. So that takes some of the stress away from me. Definitely the timeline stuff of custom painting is probably the toughest thing we deal with. Just the nature of what we do, it's hard to predict how long we'll be on jobs. We're always moving around people, things are getting done, and then it's also, you know, you deal with some of this new construction stuff. I have a new construction job that I posted about. We were using the big tips and spraying primer and doing the ceilings, and dealing with a smaller builder. He doesn't have like a PM running the job or anything. He's sort of doing the whole thing himself. So I sent somebody down there to start filling and caulking. He calls me randomly one day like, "Oh, we have trims all in. We're ready for you." I'm like, "Well, I didn't have a heads up on when this would be. It was just sort of random." And then it's like, so I send somebody down there to start filling nail holes, and he's like, "Oh yeah, next Tuesday the carpeting's going in." And it's like, what? You know, I don't have the manpower to send down there to fill nail holes. So definitely dealing with a lot of stresses from managing projects. And then the project I posted about today with the carpentry. Yeah, John said that's a lot of new construction. But that project we're doing the carpentry on, you know, that project sort of ballooned as well. We started out thinking we were going to do just some touch-ups on some stain, but ended up staining the whole house with a horrible product. Arbor Coat semi-transparent stain is not anywhere near the top of my list of favorite products. If I never use it again, I'll be happy. I would encourage everyone to look at oil-based semi-transparent stains that have non-drying oils in them. It's just, when you deal with some of these hybrid oil products, they're garbage. And even when it went on, like, we finally figured out how to get it on. It looked nice. And then I was there Friday, and it's starting to absorb in more or deteriorate off faster or whatever it is, and the sheen's all inconsistent, and it's already starting to look bad, and it's not very awesome. But even that project, so it ballooned. It started as sort of, we're going to do some paint touch-ups, we're going to do some stain touch-ups, and then we started doing the stain. That became the whole project, and then it was ready to do the paint touch-ups, but the carpentry hadn't been done. So it was either we leave, wait for carpentry to be finished, and then come back, which by the time that happens, again, all the other projects, I don't know when I was going to be able to get back. So we decided to take the carpentry on ourselves. Arturo is very skilled, and Patrick has some carpentry experience as well. So we brought in Kyle Mocht from Mocht Architecture. He's a building science expert, building engineer. So he helped us design that system. If you look at my newest post, you'll see it's very different, counterintuitive to what I'm used to painting. Usually we're trying to prevent all the water from ever getting in all the time. And this is a system where we're giving the water a place to come in and a place to come out, and it's letting it breathe, and it's just a different approach. So I can feel really confident about the paint job that we're going to put on the surfaces. But now we're talking about doing a bunch of carpentry work, and then we're going to paint. So timeline gets messed up again. And so definitely managing the timelines and managing clients' expectations is definitely the toughest of what we have to do right now. Where do you get all of this stuff that you say, anything you say about products I never heard of? What products do you mean? What do you mean? I mean, I'm always talking to experts, people that know what they're doing, know more than me, and trying to I'm somewhat obsessed with best practice. I think some people would know me would laugh to say that it's even somewhat, but I'm pretty obsessed with best practice as it relates to applications of coatings, and then I'm mostly into best practice of carpentry so that my painting will last. You know, the paint fails when the carpentry's done improperly, and that's kind of what happened on this project. We saw some paint failures that were really early on, and a year old, and there's some paint failures already. So I was like, hey, I don't really want to touch this until we have somebody look at this, because if I put my paint job on this surface and it fails again, you're going to talk to me. And so when we brought in, and I had some issues, I was worried about how water was being dealt with. So when we did bring in the expert, sure enough, there's a couple little tweaks that we made to those panels, and we'll be posting about those panels. They're going to go up tomorrow, and then we'll fill the holes, and then we're going to spray black satin on everything, which once the house is built and everything's done, it's like not the best time to spray exteriors, but we use Sickens we use Sickens door and window sometimes. They have pigmented varnish that is nice. Yeah, someone was saying that they were asking about what products we use. They're definitely higher end. Everything we do is high end, best practice. He said, you see you're going way too far in even prep work and painting. It's not way too far. It's just as far as the client expects. So, yeah, we typically are servicing higher end clients who have the budgets and have high budgets and high expectations. With high budgets always comes high expectations, and you really have to know your stuff. You have to know your stuff better than an incredibly intelligent, high functioning human being who has the money and the means to have high quality things done. And I think when you start to work in the higher and higher end, you start to realize the clients are incredibly competent individuals, and if you don't know your stuff better than them, if you don't know your stuff really, really well, they're going to find somebody else. My clients, I would hope that my clients don't go anywhere else because they can't find another paint company as knowledgeable and as dedicated to the craft as we are. That is one of my competitive advantages, I believe, and it's how we're attracting and retaining top talent and also top clients. Let's see. Some people said Sandton makes a good product, but I've still never used their water base. I've still never used a water base as good as oil. Yeah, I'm super skeptical on that stuff. I understand for new wood, like not dried out old wood, I can understand how there could be a formula that's water based that works. I've heard some people I trust say that Sandton makes a great product, and in new construction, I could see that to be the case. I'm skeptical. There's no question. I also don't have any problem with Armstrong Clark. So again, it's difficult to want to change to a water-based product. But in like repaints or restains, when the wood is deteriorated, it's lost natural oil. Definitely really believe in giving the natural oil back to the wood to keep it from being dried out and lasting a lot longer. So I've not used the Sandton. I would be open to talking to them more and trying to understand how their product works. But right now, we're definitely Armstrong Clark guys for the most part, or TWP. But we do like the Sickens door and window in certain applications. Have you used Shellac Advance? I have never heard of Shellac Advance. I do not know what it is. I'd love to know more, but I should be a coatings expert or work towards being one. Yeah, so I mean, I hope I'm good enough to know what I'm doing. I'm not like a chemist. I did get called in to consult on a project that I'm not going to talk about because the builder has chosen not to talk about it because another painter's doing the work, and we sort of helped come up with the spec for it. I'm hoping that I'll get some credit for it later. It kind of bugged me at first that I wasn't getting any credit for it on social media and stuff, but I'm going to look at the long game and continue to just give good advice, give my expertise, and hopefully that stuff kind of comes back my way. But yeah, I think you don't have Armstrong Clark in Canada. Are you sure you can't get Armstrong Clark in Canada? That seems, I feel like you must be able to get it, but maybe not. Somebody said they can't. Let's see. Tips on spraying cabinets. You'll have to do it. We'll do some YouTube videos on that. We're starting to plan out all of our YouTube videos. We're going to do some very in-depth sort of documentary style YouTube videos on our projects, and then we're also going to make a lot of supplemental content, more educational. I mean, some tips on spraying cabinets, I think, is like more than anything is prepare the surface well and prepare your spray area well. Mask things off solidly so you're not worried about getting paint anywhere, and make sure you have a large enough area to spray in. I know having your area masked off in a way where you can very easily move around and you're not super constricted is really nice. And then practice. Like, if you're using an airless to spray cabinets on site, you better know what you're doing. I think most people will tell you that. That's not an easy thing to do, depending on the product, but the faster drying products are not as hard, but you really need to be careful spraying cabinets on site with airless. A lot of guys do it, but I've used Penafin Brazilian stain. It's okay. It's better than, I'll tell you right now, it's 100% better than the Arbor Coat, but still it's not a non-drying oil, like primarily non-drying oils based. I'm not sure if they've gone to modified oil yet, but even if they are an oil, like Penafin will still lap mark on you pretty well. You have to be careful with that kind of stuff. The really nice thing about Armstrong Clark is it's mostly non-drying oils, so it recoats over itself incredibly well, and it doesn't lap. I've never seen it lap. There was a project we did one time where I can't tell if it was lapping or not, but like, you have to work really hard to get Armstrong Clark stain to lap on you. Bin 2 is advanced. C2 cabinet and trim coat. What do you think? I think C2 cabinet and trim coat is a great option if you're spraying. I think you have to be really good to be able to brush it and have it work out well. It's a very fast drying water-based coating. It dries really hard, which is great. It's a true enamel. It has that what does it have in it? It has that like whey protein based, whatever it is. It's a really durable resin base. The C2 paint line is a very impressive paint line for the price. I recommend it to people a lot. C2 cabinet and trim paint. If you grab some of that stuff and try to brush it, like, you really have to know what you're doing, and you definitely need to use a lot of extender. But it's a good product. I don't see a lot wrong with it. Yeah, well, EA said that he might see a couple tricks from me to get a different perspective. I do this show hoping to give some people a different perspective on the coatings industry and on painting and running a painting business, working for a painter and hiring a painter. I hope I can shine a little bit of a different light and a different perspective than the average painter. I think the average painter, like the stereotypical painter, doesn't have we don't have a great reputation as a trade. I think it could be a lot better. And so I'm passionate about painting and painting at a high level, and I want to help in any way I can to, like, push our industry standards higher. And let's try to keep that bar from being so low. I think it's just tough. The barrier to entry is so low in our industry. If you have a paintbrush and can say you've done some painting, like, you can pretty much be a painter. And if you don't know coating science well enough, you don't know products, process, you can't even get, like, you can really cause some damage. Never mind all the customer service stuff that I think we really suck at as an industry. I'd be very hesitant to use a synthetic base waterborne shellac. That just, I won't be the guinea pig, let's put it that way. John said it's crazy how Armstrong Clark doesn't lap. You don't believe it until you see it. It's true. I made a video a few years ago where we purposely like splattered stain on a deck, and we purposely walked in the stain and then walked across the deck, and then we stained the whole deck. Those are things that you would like never do. I was always taught to, like, you take 2-3 boards, you stain them from like end to end, then you start on the next 3 boards, you stain them from end to end, keeping a wet edge the whole time to make sure that you never get a lap mark, even with oils. What Armstrong Clark has been able to do with their product is really impressive in the way that it's very user-friendly on the application, and it's also very user-friendly on the recoat, which is even more important when you come back that next time. Because if you're doing semi-transparent stain on an exterior and you're not selling a maintenance package, you're doing your clients a disservice and yourself a disservice. No question. I think too often people wait way too long to get it recoated. Go to Armstrong Clark's website. I think someone asked where you can get Armstrong Clark. I would go to their website, go to their Instagram, send them a DM. But they sell it all over the place. They definitely ship it all over the place. I would be shocked if you can't get it in Canada. Someone said, okay, let's go to the bottom. I mean, I kind of know what to do, but when do you see in stripping the paint to the whole bare wood to paint it next? So we strip, we don't do a ton of exterior repaints. I'm not very cost effective. I'm not going to win on price on an exterior repaint very often, or ever, I would say. We'll always be more expensive because we're going to be incredibly thorough. If I see a board has peeling paint on it, I'm going to strip that whole board to bare wood. That's just sort of the model that we use right now. That's our standard. If there's extensive peeling on a house, like, we're going to strip the whole house to bare wood, which means we don't win many exteriors because not every client wants that. If you look at the price per year of a paint job, I think that it ends up being better if you just strip it to bare wood once. We use wood preservative, then we use high quality Fine Paints of Europe primer paint, and now 10 to 12 years, it's still going to be looking mint. You might put one more top coat on it 10 to 12 years and get another 10 to 12 years. If you look at the price per year, and it depends on the weather, it could be 7 to 10, but it's going to be pristine and you're never going to have paint failure. If I can get to bare wood and use a wood preservative, I don't have to worry about paint failure. And if I can not have paint failure and I can put an incredibly long-lasting top coat like Fine Paints of Europe Eco is, we're going to have a great price per year of our paint job, but we're going to have a large price up front. So people who are more short-term minded, I looked at a job this last week and they're looking to sell the house in 1 to 2 years. We're never going to be a good option for that client. I gave them a couple names and said, call these guys. They have systems in place to take care of your house efficiently. We just don't have those kinds of systems in place. I don't know where to start. That's a very competitive market, those basic repaints. My dog just came in. Hi, Bear. So I've moved out of that competitive market and I'm in a less competitive, harder to maybe survive, but easier to get what it costs to do it right. So we just don't do a lot of them, but we are very, very thorough in our exteriors. I love getting to bare wood. When we can get to bare wood, I can use a wood preservative. And once you put the wood preservative on this wood, the C2 Guard is what we use. Once you put that wood preservative on the wood cannot get wet. It won't absorb moisture, but it will absorb the top coat. So now you don't have to worry about all those paint failures from moisture, especially with all the new growth wood that's just a sponge that sucks up water. if you can see the trade to be better, then open a school, I'm guessing is what he's saying. That sounds like a lot of work, opening up a school. I mean, I would love to maybe do some version of that someday with YouTube and or working with the PCA. But yeah, I don't think I'm gonna be opening up a school anytime soon. I have a school where we teach our apprentices. I think someone's asking about how a lot of our work is very expensive. I mean, our work is costly up front. Sorry, I'm going to sneeze. It costs more up front. Many things in life that are high quality cost more up front. And so there's the difference between the cost up front and the actual cost over time. And that's my job in the sales process, is to teach people about the cost up front versus the value, the cost over time, which would be the value. I think we're a great value. I think that we are definitely more expensive than other people. And many people just don't care. So, fine. Like, we're not good for you. But there are a lot of people who do want, if you just bought your house, I always say, like, that guy who was selling this house, the woman who was selling her house, I told her, like, we're not a good person for you, but when you buy your new house, now, that's when you want to talk to me. So I understand people who run into clients not wanting to pay. It's very difficult to be in the market that I'm in. You really have to know your stuff. You have to know your stuff really well. You have to have great reputation. You have to have a great sales process. You have to have a great team of painters to come then execute, because I'm selling the dream to these people. I'm telling these people it's going to be amazing, and it's blah, 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 right? Now, if I have some dopes show up who, look like they couldn't fight their way out of a paper bag and don't know anything, and they're covered in paint and they're just like messes, like, all the stuff I said is for naught. So you have to have the margin for error in what I do is very, very small. And so it's a blessing and a curse. We get to feel really good about doing these really cool high-end projects, but we have very little room for error. So you have to have all of your ducks in a row. It's higher stakes. And not every market can bear it. But I think there's some version of it for every market. Even if it's not some of the stuff that we're doing, we still dial it back for certain clients. It's very possible. But there are many businesses out there that are proof that you don't have to be price competitive to succeed. I mean, Apple iPhones were the perfect example when they came out, right? The price was astronomical, but they added a lot of value. And so if people buy, many people will understand value, and that's what they're purchasing, and they can see past the upfront cost. But yeah, it definitely makes for more work. How often do you maintain exterior decking? It really depends on the surface and its exposure. Hardwood, like Ipe and mahogany decks that get a lot of sun, we do a couple on the water that we do like every single year. And by the time we come back for the next year, like, it needs it. Because hardwood deck is not going to absorb a lot of stain, and it's just going to get beaten. Now, we just did a hardwood deck this year that we hadn't done in 4 years, and it looked amazing for 4 years. But it's in the backyard, covered in trees. It's a darker color. And so a 3-year recoat on that is really probably ideal. She had a little bit of fading in spots where when we stained it, there was a subtle two-toned look to the wood, but it was much more cost-effective than stripping the whole deck. And I knew she wouldn't notice it. She wouldn't care. It's not what she wanted. So I didn't need to sell her on a full strip of the deck. Because I wanted to give her what she wanted, and there was no reason to charge her more to strip the whole deck. If she was a very particular client and wanted perfect uniformity, like, there was a couple scratch marks from like from a chair or something, and I told her, like, when we stain it, those are going to still be there subtly. They're not going to go away totally. But you're going to save a couple $1,000s from stripping this whole deck, or whatever. Well, I don't remember. It was $1,800 or something like that. And so we try to give our clients value. In that situation, value is not fully stripping the deck, because it was an aesthetic sacrifice that we made that was very minute. So I think exterior decking is very product and weather and substrate dependent. But we try to always be very conservative with our clients and not promise the world. Any of you who have done decks know clients think it's going to last forever, and they don't want to hear it's 1 to 2 years. But I was talking with my wife about this today, Sarah. I was talking about Sarah about this today, if you guys don't know. And we were talking about how being right, like say I tell a client, it's going to be you should restain this every year. And if you don't, it's going to cost you a lot more money later. And I write that in an email to cover my butt. And then 4 years goes by, it's failed, they call me back, it costs them a ton of money to fix it, and they're like, what the heck? And I can prove to them through email that I told them, I said, just so you know, blah, 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 it's going to cost more money, and moved on, and did what they wanted, right? Just because I'm right, I might not even get that job again. They're still going to have a bad taste in their mouth. And so it would be better if I sort of gave them more pushback up front, had the uncomfortable discussions. They didn't really like to hear it, but I worked harder to convince them to just recode it every 2 years. It saved them money over time. I think that's a win. That it's a little more painful up front, but being right all the time, in hindsight, being right when things go wrong, isn't that valuable. And I think with maturity, I've begun to learn being right in hindsight when something bad happens is not necessarily the way to be. And it might be better to get a little uncomfortable and fight a little harder up front for what you know to be right before something goes wrong, rather than just covering your butt and sending an email or getting it in writing that you said it, but doing that more passively. Something to think about. It had us thinking about it today. Let's see, I'm reading more. Yeah, it's not a well-known company. Someone asked, after you apply the stain, do you do 1 or 2 coats, or do you usually wipe off? So with hardwood decks, especially, with anything that we're brushing and rolling, like the spindles and the handrails, that's usually going to get a brush. It's going to get set, and then we're going to wipe off the excess, because it's just tough to get the perfect amount of coating without having we want to give it as much as humanly possible, so it drinks as much into the wood as possible. That's why we use an oil stain, and then we sort of take the excess off. But I found, if you see, I have a video where we did a deck, and I'm wearing my ridiculous rubber loafers, and a lot of people saw that video. And you'll see we're using a stain pad to apply the stain. And in my experience, with the stain pad, we can stretch the same amount of stain a lot farther, so we can get the wood super soaked without having the excess to have to go back and wipe. So we found a little bit of a hack there, where we used to brush and roll all surfaces and then wipe up the excess 10-15 minutes after. That's very time consuming. Also, it increases the risk of all those rags spontaneously combusting, even though we're very vigilant with that. But if you use a stain pad, it's a foam pad. Shoreline sells them. There's a number of companies that sell these stain pads for decks. They actually work really great. I saw a few people using them since on Instagram. It's surprising how well it works. Let's see what else. If you think Boston and New York City are different places as far as market's concerned, I don't know, man. I think there's a lot of people in New York City who are willing to pay a lot of money for high quality painting. I know a lot of guys doing it. I would suspect that it's more that your sales process is probably not where it could be. Your presentation, your reputation, and you may just be in the wrong circle. And sometimes when you're in a circle of clients, it's hard to get out of it. They're not going to refer you to that higher level client that really wants quality, and so your reputation may not. that might not be your reputation. So I would say in every major city there is a market for extremely high quality painting, but it's just a very, very different client experience. It's very hard to get in with these types of clients. They're not just going to the phone book and getting 3 estimates and going with the number that looks best. It's very reputation based, it's very knowledge based, it's experience based, and it takes a lot of time to get into the high end market. So I think you have to try to put yourself in the mindset of a high end client and think about what do they want. I can't afford my services. Like, I would never hire me. Not today, that's for sure. So I can't look at it through the lens of what I would want and like all those things. Like, I have to get outside of myself and try to see it from above. And I think there's a lot of value to that. And I'm sure if you look hard enough, you'll find the people in your city that are doing the high end stuff, and you can sort of emulate them. Mickey is obsessed with the plywood not being coated. I had exactly the same reaction. So on my newest post, you'll see that we're using hardy board, and we're priming it on all sides, and then we're attaching it to vertical plywood strips. I assure you, Mickey, that a very, very knowledgeable human being that's obsessed with building science. If you look at mock architecture and all of the stuff they do, if you look at I just heard Building Science Fight Club. I think her name is Christine. She was on the Modern Craftsman, and she was talking about how plywood there's an absorption rate and a retention rate, and plywood is really good at absorbing water and letting it go. Much better than OSB. So I did push him on that, and he assures me that the plywood will take on moisture and let it off, and take on moisture and let it off, and it will not cause harm to the plywood. It's very different than if the plywood was in a very closed off environment. It got wet and stayed wet. That plywood is not going to get wet and stay wet. That's the beauty of that system. It's an air channel. It's letting water in, but it's also letting air in. And we space those out very purposely. The spaces are there, fairly significant spaces. And the thickness of the plywood is a 1/2 inch for that reason, so that we have air circulation. So that plywood is going to get wet, but it's then going to dry. And if wood gets wet and dries, and wood doesn't rot when it gets wet and dries. It rots when it gets wet and stays wet. So I know, because I'm a coatings guy. I want to coat everything on all sides. And he was like, no, plywood is fine. So that's very interesting. I like to see that. I love talking to guys that know more than me about other stuff. Let's see. Oh, we don't have a seltzer sponsor yet. Sorry, Pro Paint. Tonight I have peach bubbly, actually. Came from my mom's house. I have Waterloo in the fridge at my house right now. The peach bubbly is pretty delicious. Right now, my favorite seltzer is still the limoncello from LaCroix. But the grape and strawberry from Waterloo are right up there. They're tremendous. Louis Gloria, I wonder if he's still here. Hey Louis, if you are here. They're amazing. If you guys aren't following Louis Gloria Painting, they're out down in Dallas. Big operation doing some crazy high-end stuff. And Louis himself is a master craftsman. Unbelievable guy. I would recommend following him. John Shearer has a 10-year-old FPE exterior in Seattle. And I know a few other guys that have them. Obviously, I haven't been in business for 10 years, and I haven't been using FPE for nearly 10 years. But I do know people who have 10-year-old FPE exteriors that I've seen looking amazing. It's incredibly robust paint. Let's see, what other questions do we have? John said the same thing. So with the exterior hardwood decks, they're doing 10 to 12 months. And in California, where he is at, you can do 10-month cycles, and it doesn't really matter. If I did a 10-month cycle here, eventually we'd end up in like the wintertime staining decks, and it wouldn't work out very well. So we still end up with just about a year. But like I said, it's not looking great by the time we get back to those decks. John said, telling a client you're only going to get 1 year out of our work is hard to say out loud, but it's true. That is a very true statement. Nick Slavic has talked about this before. I've talked with him about it before. It is not easy. Again, it's like what I was just talking about. It's not easy to sit there and have that hard conversation with the client. Look them in the eye and say, you're about to pay me. I'm a master craftsman. I'm using the highest quality product, and you're going to need me to come back here in 10 to 12 months to redo this again. The pushback initially that you're going to get from that client is going to be a little uncomfortable, if not painful, right? But sticking to your guns, not backing down because you know your stuff. Like Gina, that was on here before, was talking about confidence comes from knowing your stuff. Try not to swear, I guess, for YouTube. Just in life, it's probably good not to swear. So I'm trying to be better at not swearing. So knowing your stuff and standing there confidently saying this, and then walking away when the client goes, the other guy told me 2 years. Well, you should definitely hire a guy who's figured out a way to get you 2 years on your hardwood deck. Because I've been obsessed about this stuff. I've done a lot of hardwood decks. And in this case, I've never seen a deck last more than a year. But if you know a guy who get 2, you should hire him. But really standing up and going, no, it takes a year. Here's why. And feeling that uncomfortableness, I think a lot, I mean, I'm definitely a people pleaser. And it's taken me a long time to get more comfortable having people not be pleased with the things I say up front. But again, I think it's better to stand up for what you believe in and stick to it and push a little harder up front than it is to say, I told you so, be right, but now have the client be in a worse position. That's just my 2 cents. Let's see, we have lots of people saying stuff. This is great. Okay, what do I do if my price and another company's price are 15% in difference? All right, there's a lot of things you can do. I want to win that job. If it's a job, if I bid it, I want to win it. We don't bid. Surely don't bid all the phone calls we get. And a lot of times I am trying to talk the client out of even having us come out and bid it because I want to make sure we're a good fit. Because we're going to be the most expensive. And so, there's something that comes with that. But if I'm 15% difference between somebody else, we're going to start talking about, let's look at this apple. Are we talking apples to apples? And I will tell you, I don't think I've ever bid a project against somebody apples to apples. It's very, very rare. And if that's the case, and they're 15% different, we can move our price if something else moves. So if you're going to be incredibly flexible on the timeline of this project, maybe I can take 10% off, and I'll use it as fill-in work. If you're going to change the scope of this project, maybe you really want to hire us, but you don't want to spend 15 grand, you want to spend 13. And maybe there's a way we can take the scope of the project and reduce it, therefore reducing the price. I will never just change my price to change my price. I used to do that all the time just to win a job. We try to always, it's a give and take. We will reduce the price if you give me something that, take it both ways. And then plenty of times you have to have enough work coming in where you can say, good luck. Hey, maybe that guy needs that job and he's taking a 15% hit on it. Or maybe he underbid the project and he's going to cut corners on you, client, or whatever it is, But I think it's very important to be able to bid every project in a way where you don't need the project. You'd like it. You'd like to work with that client. But if you need it, it's going to be really tough to be a profitable company and be able to pay your people well and stay in business. I know that's definitely a struggle. Someone asks, is it true that FPE is more suitable for Europe's climates? I've not experienced that to be true. I think Europe's climate and our climate, maybe it's a little cooler. I don't know a ton about Europe. Europe's also a huge place. A lot of different climates. FPE, like many paints made in Holland, is just an incredibly high quality paint that they put a price on. in America, we make all these levels of quality of paint and change the pricing to suit we give all these strata of paint. What they're doing is just adding more filler to the paint, lower quality ingredients to get that price there. Fine Paints of Europe's not making this massive markup on paint. When their paint costs almost 2.5, 3 times the price of another gallon of paint, it's because the raw ingredients are more expensive, and it's a more robust product. So I think FPE is, if you just look, touch, and feel a product, a surface coated in FPE versus a Benjamin Moore or Sherwin-Williams, I don't know that anyone's going to touch that and say that they're the same. It's just a very different coating. Not to mention, we thin Fine Paints of Europe Holland Lac 35% and spray it all the time. Name me a Sherwin-Williams or Benjamin Moore product that you could thin 35%, spray it, and have it perform. We should actually, I need to do that experiment now, but that's almost laughable to think about, because they've already diluted their paint so much. They didn't thin it, but they diluted it with inert fillers like clay, talc, mica. Cheap stuff to fill the gallon. So if I took a gallon of super paint and thinned it 30% with water, or I don't know, some oil, and thinned it with thinner, 30%, man, I doubt it's going to perform very well because it's already thin. So there is a difference in FPE, I promise. And once you've played with it, you'll know what I'm saying. Please explain to the people. Mickey thinks it's going to fail. I have done work in those mansions have you done work in those mansions at Middletown, Newport? I would imagine it takes a year to get it done. We've not worked on one of the mansions yet. I did price one, and then we were highly recommending they didn't just do a quick paint job, but a full restoration. And luckily, they decided not to go with, it would have been probably $150,000 exterior repaint, and it needs probably a $500,000 restoration of all the paint removed from the building. It's a big mansion. It's a privately owned mansion in Newport. We have never actually worked on one. I've worked on, we did a project for a client who owns one of the outbuildings from one of the mansions in Middletown. It was one of the outbuildings. I think it was the carriage house to one of these big manor homes that Nicolas Cage bought for some crazy amount one time. But that alone was like a $4 million, $5 million standalone home now. But we've not worked on the mansions yet. We're getting there. We have talks of working on a couple of different mansions in Newport. But the scale of those is just out of control. Someone said Rich Dunn has a 20, 30-year-old FP experience. I've seen Holland Lac 13 years, 14 years later on an interior. If you go far enough back in my posts, there is a picture. I should bring this up and put it on a highlight. I did a job for a client who had FPE when it was not called Holland Lac. It was called, I forget the name right now. It's on the tip of my tongue. I just saw a can of it the other day. Hasselac, I think it was called. They had an interior trim in a living room that was painted like I want to say it was like a maroonish color. That trim paint looked like it was done yesterday. It was absolutely gorgeous. And if you look at those pictures, you can go far enough back, and I'll try to remember to post it. Someone remind me if I forget. This was a 15-year interior trim paint job that looked brand new. We did brand new Holland Lac right at the door frame where it met. They were different colors, but they looked almost identical. It's marine grade enamel, like it's incredibly robust paint. So especially on an interior where we use it mostly anyway, there's just nothing like it. How can I say that Fine Paints of Europe will last 7 years and you've only been using it for a couple of years? Because I have colleagues that have used it. I don't have to. It's that thing about the wisdom that we were talking about in the past episodes. Knowledge versus wisdom, like making your own mistakes and learning from them is knowledge, and wisdom is learning from others. I try to practice wisdom, and I try to look to others and take that knowledge on. So when I see one of my colleagues who has a paint job that looks like $1 million 10 years later, you know, in a harsh climate of Seattle, that's not a not harsh climate. You know, I'm going to believe that. And again, I don't sign a warranted contract to anybody that says this job is going to last 15 years, right? What I say is this is best practice to the best of my knowledge. I don't know of another exterior paint that's going to last as long. That's all I can say, right? Is I've done my homework. I believe I'm an expert in my field, and this is my experience, and this is what I believe to be best practice. I'm not building $1 million on it. I'm not swearing on it. I'm not signing my life over if it fails at 6 years or at 9 years and I said 10. I'm saying this is best practice as I believe it to be. And that's the best that you can do in my experience. Wow, lots of people are commenting. This is awesome. Quality paint job isn't cheap. What is your plan after a time when other painters in your area will receive also higher quality and underbid the market? I get this question a lot. I think social media changed a lot for our industry. For a long time, contractors sort of kept a lot of secrets. It was, you know, I figured this thing out and I'm going to keep this secret. And I understand that. And there are a few things recently with the metal that we have learned that we're going to keep secret. I will not be sharing the entire Vero metal process that we do. It cost me well over $10,000 in R&D, straight R&D, just hours spent and material not wasted, but used to practice. Well over $10,000 in R&D to be able to apply large amounts of metal sprayed. So I'm not going to turn around and just tell the world, here's the formula. You don't have to spend $15,000 doing this. But so that's on one extreme end. But then there are many, many things that are sort of, if they didn't take me a lot of time, and I'm open to sharing a lot. As you guys know, you follow me because I'm very open with a lot of this stuff. I hope that's one of the reasons that you follow me. If you follow me, you know that at least. We try to be very open. I believe that I am much more concerned about the lowest end of the market pulling us all down than the guys that are right with me undercutting me and making me go out of business. I think I don't see the world as a zero-sum equation, and I don't see that when a competitor of mine gets better that it takes away from me. And that's not something I've always felt, for sure. That's also something that it's a struggle sometimes to internalize that type of thinking, because I think we're taught in the sports world, it's like either you win or you lose, but I have some mentors, some people who have had great success in this business, who Dan Ross meets with his top competitor in a very competitive market in San Francisco on an almost weekly basis for lunch, and they share openly many, many things. And I can't look at that guy and be like, you don't know what you're talking about. He's had all the success in the world. So I think that I'm much more concerned about keeping my side of the street clean, being a great, and now if I was trying to be fat and happy, I don't want anybody pushing at my heels, right? But it's like we're on a competitive team. We're in a competitive market, and when you're on a football team and the new guy comes on the team and he's a stud and he's pushing you and you're the starter, you can look at it two ways. You can be like, oh, screw this guy, he's coming to get my job. Or you can be like, well, I can work twice as hard to keep my job. So I think that idea of other people in my area. Now, what I don't like to see is people in my area there's somebody that comes to mind I'm not going to share, taking the marketing aspects and the lip service of the quality and then turning around and not actually executing that quality. That I have a problem with. But I don't think that's the norm. And I think there'll always be guys like that. So honestly, I'm not very worried about the competition. I don't think that's a winner's mentality. I think a winner's mentality is to focus on me. How can my company how can I be the best owner and the best facilitator of greatness in my company? And how can I continually raise the bar? And if I continue to think like that, I think that's the way I want to look at it. And that's how I believe that will equal greater success than if I'm constantly in a race looking backwards, hoping no one's catching me. Which I think is very analogous to what that is if you're focusing on the other guys, hey, if I lose a bid to somebody, like, all right, moving on. I got to go do the next one. I'm running forwards. I'm not looking back too much. It's obviously a fine line. But I'd rather see a bunch more guys start charging more and doing higher quality work than worry about that stuff. We may ask you this. How do you get the most price of a client on the job? Mostly if they're bloody rich. Bloody Rick, but I think he means rich. I don't think... I'll tell you right now, the amount of money I perceive my client to have or that they have does not affect the price at all. I'll tell you that right now. I don't think that's a good way to go about business. It's a very short-term way of thinking. If you're trying to size up your client and figure out how much they're willing to, what they'll pay, I know plenty of guys that do that stuff, but I think it just needs to be looked at more like, okay, does this client have the means and the budget and the expectations that are of a higher level? I will then present a package to them that costs more because more work's going to be done. That might be some type of, but that's not even about how much money they have. It's more about talking to them individually, like, what are you looking for here? If you're starting to look at people, how much money your clients have, I don't think that's a very good way of going about maybe what you're getting at. The way to work for people who consequently have a lot of, I think people have a lot of money generally consequently, as a consequence to how they live their lives and the value they add to the world. I believe in the capitalist market, and I believe that adding a lot of value to this world generally means that you then recoup that value in terms of money. So I think for the most part, people who have a lot of money are adding a lot of value to the world. They're high functioning individuals. So, and they have more money than me. They're higher functioning individual than me on many levels. I'm not going to, how ridiculous it would be for me to think I'm going to charge this person more and they're not going to notice that I'm just charging them more because they have money. That's a horrible reason to charge someone more. My hourly rates don't go up because I'm working for wealthier people. So if my prices go up, it's because I'm planning to spend more time, which is because I think the client has impressed upon me they want a higher quality end product, which will take more time. So the price will be higher. But price comes from how much time and how much materials is this project going to cost. So if I'm looking to get rich quick, which I hope none of you are, this is not the business to get rich quick in. I mean, not listening to my podcast here and thinking about stuff the way I think about it is not a recipe for getting rich quick. So, and I think that's sort of like, ignore how much money the client has for money's sake. It's about what do they want and what can you offer them. This is a value thing, value proposition. So if that's helpful at all, I think it just comes down to like giving clients what they're looking for. And sometimes, like, so as an example, like my higher end clients have the means to pay for a better customer experience, right? It's little stupid things. It's hard to, but like, just like, it's more time is spent not applying coatings. More time is spent protecting surfaces, cleaning up well after ourselves. You know, we have a porta potty on the job site, so we're not using your bathrooms. Like, I'm trying to struggle to find more, but like to be more thorough costs more money. So our clients are willing to spend more money for a more thorough project. I'm going to miss out on all these awesome comments. I'm not even halfway through. Oh my gosh. All right. There's a minute 43. I learned my lesson last time. I'm going to stop this. I'm going to come right back on. I know a bunch of people have said a bunch of things down here. If I have not gotten to it yet, please re-ask it. And I'm going to get off and come right back on.